So let's think today, or in this video, about how stress is related to disease. Now, there are a couple of ideas that I want you to be thinking about. One is allostasis. So we like to stay in a relatively stable manner across time. We don't like things too much or too low. Allostatic load is the wear and tear on our body accumulating when there is repeated or chronic stress. And that load predisposes the person to disease. So when we're thinking about reacting to stress, what we want to do is react and then recover. And if the same stressor happens more than once, we want that reaction to continue, and actually more like this brown line, to decrease with time. The first time you jump, and the second time you go, and the third time you go, huh. We also want some recovery to return to baseline as opposed to here. But we want the response to be high enough that we have a significant or a sufficient response. So a number of different things to pay attention to here. So lots of stress depletes the body's ability to balance. Our body likes maintaining the same temperature, about the same heart rate, about the same breathing rate, and we return to baseline across time. That's homeostasis. Allostasis is how do all these things respond to stress and return us to optimal functioning. So when this is appropriate, no problem. When it's inappropriate, we experience allostatic load. Now, we used to think that stress happened and then it sort of slid off of us. Now we know that when stress comes, it adds up. We don't get rid of it as quickly. And so some of you may have heard the phrase, like the straw that broke the camel's back. That's what we're talking about here. That when stress keeps coming, it may overload us. Now, there are things that we can do to address this. We can reduce stress when possible. We can think about it differently. We can engage our social support system. We can make sure that we're exercising, that we're resting, that we're playing, that we get enough sleep, that we eat well, that we're taking care of ourselves or asking others to do so. If, on the other hand, our allostatic system is too high, we're going to freak out at things that we normally wouldn't. So bear with me on this slide. Chronic stress leads to or causes a whole series of different kinds of problems. So we've talked about how cortisol and the catecholamines increase. Insulin, we become resistant to. Blood glucose increases. That's where we're seeing type 2 diabetes. This then, as a consequence, affects the mitochondria in our cell, which are energy producers. And this has a whole variety of different kinds of problems, ultimately in terms of shortening the telomeres, which tends to be related to earlier death, some dysregulation of the genes, some altered gene expression, and early aging. Some other kinds of outcomes include problems with blood pressure, heart disease, diabetes, brain disease, or dementia, and physical and cognitive decline. In other words, chronic stress, bad. You knew that already. So let's think about specifically what happens. So at relatively low levels, so like this, all our systems are in balance. So we are able to respond to stressors, we're able to recover from stressors, we adapt across time, and our responses are sufficiently high. When we're experiencing some allostatic load, we are running into problems in terms of responding to stress, adapting to it, recovering from it, and also recovering sufficiently. And we're seeing that to an even greater problem when there is allostatic overload. So at this point, the system begins to break down. We may experience heart failure, blood glucose problems, hyperactive systems, and hypoactive, underactive. Hyper meaning too much, hypo meaning too little. And these problems can lead to accelerated aging, disease, and death. Okay, so let's summarize that a little more. Stress causes problems with heart rate and blood pressure, some cardiovascular problems, causes problems in stress hormones and immune responses, and it disturbs the digestive system. All of this leads to increased risk of disease. On the other hand, there are things that we can do about this. So green is referring to mild stress. This tan is referring to moderate stress, and pink referring to high stress. One of the things you see is changes in mitochondrial content and function. And across time, the mitochondria are really stressed and really have difficulty modulating the system well. When this is a problem, or this becomes a problem, when in general we are more sedentary, and that tends to make us less resilient. On the other hand, if we are regularly active, then we tend to become more resilient and are better able, at responding to the system. Okay, I will see you in the next video as we're beginning to talk about the kinds of appraisals that we make that either increase stress or decrease stress. See you there. Bye-bye.